So, welcome, dear Kulumbegashvili. I'm very happy to have you here in this virtual way to talk with you about your film Beginning, which already has quite a history behind it in these last few months, starting with the selection of the Cannes Film Festival and, of course, the great premiere in a physical way in San Sebastian and the many prizes it won there. And I think when we discovered this film, we were very impressed by its distinctive style, but by the aesthetics that you crafted. And I wanted to start with talking with you about this intense experience that you created. And we're always looking for intense experiences at the festival. And yours is one that is, of course, very ambivalent and also in some moments very hard to stomach. Because it creates this intensity of psychological unease. And I was really curious to hear you talk about how you made this, how you created this atmosphere and this tension.
Hello. First of all, thank you very much for including my film in the program. And of course, I wish to be with the audience in the screening room in person, but I'm glad that at least online the audience can still watch the film. Well, I think that for me, everything starts with the writing, because I am convinced that as an author of my own script, or that probably, I don't know, directors who also write their own scripts, you don't really write the script, but you're writing the film. So I think that it's a bit different from writing a script, which maybe you'll give to another, like to the director to interpret. But when you're working on your own script, this is when you start to really get into the film as an author also. So this is actually for me, that's the most important part, that while writing, I need to really already start to experience and live in the world of the film, and to feel how the time functions, or how the time flows, or is how the time is contained, or maybe in certain scenes. And I need to emotionally really connect with the characters, even with those who are not easy to connect with. Like, for example, with the detective, I still need to understand this character, and I need to connect with the character, because otherwise it will fall into the judgment of what's right and what's wrong, and then I cannot really write the character up to that. And why I always have this and then when I finish writing the script, for me, it's like a storyboard. It's already done for me. Like I have a storyboard and I have a shot list in a certain way, because I already know how I'm going to work on a film. But then again, on set, while we're shooting, I am always next to the camera, and I really like to be very close, the closest I can be with the actors in front of the camera. So I don't use the monitor, and I really want to be there, because I need to feel, again, the connection with what's happening in front of the camera. And if I feel emotionally, if I can feel that the scene has a substance, and I do go through the emotional experience that characters go through, then I am convinced that I do have a shot, or I do have a scene. But otherwise, it doesn't make sense for me to just shoot things and then in editing think about how to make it work, because I guess for me the editing happens in the writing stage. So it's a bit like maybe opposite of how it is usually done. But I do believe in the connection, that I need to constantly have this connection with what's happening in front of the camera, and I need to feel the intensity of what's happening. And it's not always easy, but
you're visualizing while writing. You're visualizing the editing, or what do you mean by the editing is already happening in the writing?
Yes, because I write very long scenes, for example, and maybe for some of the readers, when they read the script, it looks almost impossible. And I did get those questions. People were asking me if I'm going to have cutaways, like so-called cutaways, and pick-up shots, so I can cut to something. But I really believe that if the scene does not work, if you cannot just connect with the characters and listen to them while they just sit in front of the camera, like for example, the scene in the bedroom between husband and wife, there is no cutaway that's going to help it, because then you start to compose this story, but then I start to question, like, what does telling the story really mean? Is it conveying the information? Is it just showing an action? Or is it just accumulating something through something intangible, which is the combination of all the elements of cinema? So I think that it's just a matter of approach and constantly questioning what are you doing as a director? Like, what's your take on a material? How are you working with it?
You're talking about perspective and subjectivity, or the point of view you take?
I'm talking more about an approach, because of course I went to the film school, and as a director you do have certain techniques or the tools that you can use and work with the material, and it's good to know, of course. You need to know all of this, but at the end I'm not sure how much knowing helps, like, because when you're working with a certain material, there is only one way. I do believe that there is only one way of working with any particular material in the script. You can't just shoot it in 50 different ways and make the same film, or like tell the same story. It's, in my understanding of cinema, it's impossible, because it's going to be a totally different film, and it will have something totally different emotional experiences, because I do believe that every element, because we are all elements of the film, as I am as a director of one of the elements, maybe because it's my take and my vision of this film. And really what matters is humans, like who's in front of the camera. And in that sense, editing happens before you start to shoot also, because when you start to work with the actors and you start to understand what they bring to the film, or how do they move, and how do they exist in a space, or how do they exist in front of the camera, many things start to change, and many unexpected things start to happen within a frame. And then it's your duty as a director, how much you are ready to explore what actors are offering you, or you just want to impose one vision. And there is not right or wrong. It's just a matter of decisions and how you work, I guess, or how you work on this particular film, at least.
It's interesting to think about that there is only one way of filming a particular scene, a particular moment, a particular actor in a scene. Maybe we can talk about this in the realm of one scene that is particularly strong and does a lot with the spectator, with me. I'm referring to the first encounter of her and the detective. She's sitting at this table, and there is you talked about not cutting away, and I think it's very very central to this moment and to the intensity and to the unease that that you create, is to not look away.
I think that this film entirely, for me, is about looking, to really look what's in front of us, and the aspect ratio and the mise-en-scène, how it's put together and how it unfolds in every scene and in every shot. Really, for me, this film is really to invite, or to ask the audience to look what's in front of us, and maybe to ask for the patience also to look what's in front of us. And in this particular scene, of course, when we were working on it, and the editor was on set, and he was involved before we even started to shoot. And we, of course, we were discussing with the cinematographer also how much people can look at the person sitting in a wide shot when she doesn't even talk, because most of the dialogue happens off camera. And especially there were the discussions that some people thought that maybe he's more interesting because he's the villain in this case, and he carries maybe certain kind of charisma in a sense. And there was like this thought that we need to see him, but we're looking at her. And then more those conversations were happening, the more I was convinced that we need to look at her, because it's her experience. And in my understanding, it's she's very active in that moment, because she's active emotionally and what's happening to her and in her life, and she doesn't need to do anything. She just sits in the frame. She's almost entirely static through the shot. But then, of course, the panning, and because the camera starts to move before she starts to move, it's almost something predestined. Almost she doesn't have a say in what's going to happen after. And for me, it's interesting to constantly question of how much of the decisions that the characters make are their own in every particular moment, or is it something which is beyond their control, or it's beyond our understanding maybe as humans, which also partake in decisions that we think we're making in a moment. And also because with such minimalism, for me as for the director, it was interesting to explore cinematic elements and techniques in such minimalist way, because camera almost never moves. It moves like 3 times, and it's the second time it moves in the film. And I was really curious, how do you connect with the audience, and what kind of impact does this camera move have on the audience when we do live in the world where we think that there's so many things happening around us all the time, and we're used to so much audiovisual material and with the pictures moving all the time. And then I was really interested to also question that, yes, but what if it's just one move? I want to see how what's the reaction, or what the audience members feel in this moment. And I think it is very interesting for me, because in all the Q&As I've been asked about this pen also, or about camera being so static and then moving only in very rare instances. I mean, there are many things I'm questioning and exploring as a director. I don't know if everything comes across, but for me, it's very interesting to work with the form and to really explore cinema. Like, what does it have to offer us?
Well, I think you mentioned one thing that is very interesting for interpretation of the film is the question of activity and passivity. Of course, the camera, as you describe it, in a way maybe is passive, but becomes active. And I think it relates also to this question of what does it mean to be a woman in this environment, and what do we project onto her? You just mentioned that in this scene you see her as being active, even though she's in a material way, maybe she's actually passive. I think this is also a question of what kind of character is she, and what kind of perspective do you get on her, and yeah, the question of is this a feminist perspective? It might be a little bit reductive, but the question of how do you look at this woman and her activity and passivity?
Well, I think that it is a feminist point of view, even though we can, of course, question like in what particular way, or what from which angle of a feminist point of view. I mean, everything can be questionable, but for me, she is an active character because what does it mean to be active? I think that maybe there is too much pressure and too much expectation also on women directors that we are somehow expected to make films with the so-called a positive example, or to show the more positive outcome of the stories, or to show how women can revenge or take like stand up against something, or the violence against them, or the oppression. But I think that to me it's more important to talk about the women I know and the world I live in. And I think that it's not easy to one day just transform and start to fight for the cause or for the better future. And the questioning and examining how these women live is incredibly important for me. Maybe this character does not show, she doesn't really liberate herself in any positive way, but I think going with her through this experience and the questioning the world around her and questioning her position and her condition also at the same time, to me this is a feminist point of view, to really question how she lives and what's the experience of this woman to live in this world. On the other hand, like what is a passive or active character in general? Like what does it mean to do things first of all? Because like it would talk like and you listen, but I think you're very active in this moment. So what does it mean to be active? I think this character is very active in it because and she makes decisions also directly. She does make decisions in the film. So it's all the matter again of questioning, and maybe also we're a bit overtaken maybe by the so-called classical narrative of cinema, which I don't think is classical at all. It may be more commercial, that when we need to constantly be told what's really happening to the character, what the character really feels, it's almost like we need to have everything very clear. But in life, I don't think that we as humans know everything about each other very clearly, even about people we live with and the people who are very close to us. So I really think it's important for me to keep this opacity while looking at this character or while looking at other characters in the film, because I think that being not, we are never fully understood. So why should she be fully understood? And I almost feel like, and especially this is maybe where I was also thinking about with the last one of the last scenes with her, when she sits with her back to the audience. And that was also another point of discussion in the team. And I was just, because that's the first scene I wrote in the script. And there was the first image that I had, and I was convinced that no, she doesn't turn. No, and we need to hold the camera for as long as for the audience to almost be like, she owes us to turn around to show us her reaction. But no, she does not, because it's not just our demand towards the film or our expectation. I think we need to also see how what the films demand towards us, maybe.
Mm-hmm. You consider this provocative to, in a way, think about the audience not as someone to give something to, but also to retain something from them?
Well, I don't know what's provocation, but certainly I do want the audience to be active. And I think that this is what makes audience active, to not always feed with every single detail about the character, or not to follow the so-called more like clear path in a narrative. I think that I want the audience to be active. And I think this is what makes audience more active, because it, of course, like I do think about an audience, and I do know that, okay, here maybe you bring audience in, and then maybe you just create some barrier and look how the audience also reacts, because it's a relationship between the film and an audience. It's not only the one-way relationship. It's two, not two, it's like a film and many people, like, and every single individual will have his or her own experience. But I don't know, maybe it's not up to me to say, because I don't think in those terms when I am working on a film. I don't think that, oh, let's provoke the audience, but I certainly do think that I want the audience to be active, because when I go to watch a film, and sometimes I watch all kinds of films, and sometimes I watch some Hollywood huge films with a lot of action. I do fall asleep because it doesn't leave me the space to really like have a relationship with the film. It almost like I don't need to do anything. I just need to sit, and everything is just given to me. And I think that makes audience passive.
Yeah, there's also something you mentioned is the question of materiality and what is beyond. I mean, what is beyond explanation? What is beyond the physical nature? Beyond what can be explained. And your film is also about this in its subject matter in a way, but I think also, as you mentioned, also in its form. So I wanted to talk with you about the question of what is beyond the materiality, and this possibilities of going beyond the pure realism of material objects.
Well, I think that I do consider my job as a director is to create circumstances for cinema to happen, because it's not everything is up to the director or the actors or anyone really. It's all the combination of everything together, and then something happens in front of camera or within a shot, and that's cinema at the end. Like maybe as a director in that moment, you really need to be sensitive. That's actually what's required, to be sensitive and to step back and to allow things to happen without your direct participation all the time. For example, in this film, I did have this intention. I was constantly thinking about a sense of dread, but how do you create it? And there are so many ways you would discuss it dramaturgically, how to create, but at the end, it's just creating the circumstances for what you think, how this world exists in the frame, and how to create this world. And the rest, I'm still convinced that it either happens or not. So it's, and maybe that's why some of the shots I was shooting 3 times, because it was really simple shots, and I had the storyboard and everything was working, but then nothing was really happening in front of camera. And I think that as a director, you are responsible to feel if something's happening or not, and admit that maybe what you're doing, it just brings nothing to the scene, and it's just dead. And I think at the end, what's cinema? I think it's intangible. It's feelings and emotions, and that in this particular film, maybe this sense of dread, it's intangible. So I do believe it's beyond my control. It starts to appear. It starts to reveal itself, and then you feel it when you're on set. And I was really blessed to work with these actors, and especially with the actress, with Iya, because she used to come to me and she said that she was just trying to not think about anything, and just to follow emotionally, or just to be in the condition of this character, because she said that the moment she was starting to explain, then she started to have maybe some sense of protest, because she wanted to intervene maybe into the life of this woman, or explain or find the justification. But then she said that the moment she would just allow the character to leave, there was also some sense of peace. Like she just lived in a frame. So maybe I don't know. For example, the shot in the forest when she lays down. I don't know what I don't know what I did, right? I mean, I didn't do anything. It's just really her. It's camera. It's the nature, and it's the light. It's just the basic elements of cinema, and you just step back and you allow for cinema to happen without your involvement.
It's interesting to hear you say this, because the film feels very meticulous. It feels very controlled. It feels very, you know, you feel like everything is set, everything is there and has to be there and cannot be different. And I think it's in a way paradoxical, but it's interesting that it's paradoxical, because that's maybe where the energy comes out of.
I do agree with it, and we were discussing that as well, because even sometimes people who like and they, that was the first time for them to work with me, because some people worked with me also on a short film before, so everybody thought that it's going to be so meticulously rehearsed, and I would not accept anything different from what I have written. And some of the scenes and shots, yes, it's very meticulous, but I always leave, for me, and I do very precise shot list and rehearse a lot with the actors, but I do rehearse not for the action, but I do rehearse mostly to understand the characters, because the moment actors come into the room and I start to work with them, the characters are not only what I wrote anymore. Now these actors are interpreting, and I really need to understand how these actors function. And maybe they give me something which I never even thought about. So those are why I need the rehearsals, but not to exactly meticulously plan everything. And then when you're so prepared, and for me, the most important part is to know how to place the camera, or where I place the camera. Once I place the camera and I know conceptually or as a plot what's happening in front of the camera, then I want to see what is that I did not think about, or maybe what is that I did not plan. Especially working with children, for example, like you start the scene with them, it's like you just help them to find their way in. The rest, of course, it's a lot of it is in improvisation. And I'm so grateful to all these children, because there is nothing I could write that would be better than what they brought to the film. And then little things matter, the tiniest things matter for me. Like when she sits at the table, takes her shoes off, how does she put her feet? Does she put her feet on the floor or on the shoes? And those things, yes, I do talk with actors, and it's the character work again. Like we do work on crafting the character for a long time before we start to shoot. But then in that shot, if she would not do this exactly that way, and she would just throw her shoes, I would have accepted it as well. Because we did so much work by the time we got to the set, that it's more important for me that she would be in the moment, just really living the experience of this character, rather than just to do little things just because we discussed it.
You're talking about very sensitive and very small details that matter in the experience of the film. And there's this sensuality, and there's also violence that is, I think, very hard to stomach, very hard to look at, not because it would be explicit, but because it's a psychological violence that meets then a physical violence. And yeah, I was wondering how you attacked this aspect of portraying violence.
Well, yeah, when I was writing again, I knew that the scenes would be in the film, and of course I was questioning how much or which scenes should have been in the film, and I was convinced that. And the first question I always had, like, why do these scenes need to be in the film? Because I don't want to have a like to shock the audience. So it's just, but I want to stay truthful to the experiences, that this experience of being this woman. So that was my approach. I was constantly questioning that which scenes do I need to show to go fully through the experience this woman goes through. And I do believe that there is so much psychological tension that she lives with, and psychological violence before the sexual assault scene, that by the time we get there, I feel that maybe it's already really difficult, more difficult to handle than if the scene would come without all the psychological violence or tension happening before the scene. But that scene was, of course, it's very delicate, and I was constantly questioning, but I was just convinced that the camera needs to be far away, because I was questioning in general, like if I or anybody I know would be passing by, like how close you should be without intervening. Like if you're closer and you don't intervene as a passerby, then like it already is in a way a provocation, and it starts to question the position of an audience and our responsibility in this particular scene. But if the camera is almost like too distant in a way, then you really understand that, okay, this is happening, but maybe this is how it really happens in life as well, that entire world is in a way indifferent. At least like in that moment, no one intervenes. There is no divine intervention. There is no human intervention. And for me, it was really important to work on those nuances, to create distance, because again, like otherwise, if I was closer, then like how much of it do I need to show in order for the audience to empathize or to feel this experience that the character is going through? I think that if somebody does not connect, I cannot do anything about it, because I don't think we need to see it closer, that's for sure. And it's but I could not have this scene in the film either, because, and I was thinking a lot about it, because if the scene would not be in the film, then it felt to me that I was looking away. Like maybe we do look away in life also from violence a lot. Maybe then that would be my position as director also. So I could not have this scene in the film either. And it was not an easy decision, but we discussed it with the actors a lot, and we read and the scene is shot exactly as it was written, actually. So we discussed it a lot, and we were convinced, actually, with the actors, we were convinced that it needs to be in the film. There was no way out, or just not having it. And also what's wild, I think violence is part of life, and so much goes without actually saying or without talking about it. And especially with now, like being so aware about violence against women and sexual assault, we still do talk mostly about cases that are closer to us or happen in the society we live in, and we really don't look that much into the places maybe where it's more of a norm and it's not even considered to be something. I think we need to look at things as for what they are, and we need to accept our responsibility in a way that we need to talk about it also. So it was not an easy decision, and I do understand that some people don't want to see it. So I do know, I am aware that there are people who don't want to see and who get angry or upset, but I don't know.
I think it's what makes this scene important is that you don't want to see it. I mean, a film is not always about only showing what the audience wants to see, and of course, it's part of the reflection of how you depict something that you don't go only the easy way. You don't show something for 2 seconds and then the audience knows that they're released from the pain. So I think it's part of the experience you create to take this time of showing something without being explicit about it, but being very clear and having to endure this as part of this experience, I think.
Yeah. And I understand that for people who don't want to see it, for everybody has their own reasons. I do understand it as well. So it's again the question of what's the role of an audience in all of this? Because we do watch films, and why do we watch films? I think maybe that's a very interesting question, like also.
Yeah. Is this something you talked about with Carlos Regadas? I wanted to ask you, I heard this, that you can tell us maybe something about this experience. He came on as a producer very late on, if I'm not mistaken, because of a chance encounter. Or tell us about this, because Carlos Regadas, for those who don't know, is a filmmaker from Mexico who has a very distinctive way also of approaching things that you don't necessarily want to see, and also of dealing about this relationship, an ambivalent relationship to the spectatorship. So I think there are interesting connections to make.
Well, Carlos, I was doing post-production in his facility in Mexico. So that's when he actually, at some point, he watched the cut. Until then, he has not seen the cut, or he has not read the script. So, because also, like for me, as for a director, it's okay. Carlos is the huge figure in cinema, and this is my first feature, and of course, I want to keep a distance, to the certain in a certain moment. And then, of course, when I was ready to show the cut, I showed him the cut because he's an incredible director, and I wanted to hear also his thoughts. And despite this film, or with or without talking about this film, we did talk about cinema a lot, of course, because I spent a few months in his it's actually his home, I would say, because he also lives in the same place where the studio is. But it also has a lot of like, he offers you a lot of privacy because it's a big pretty big facility, and there is a lot of space. And we don't, I mean, I think that the why any discussion can be interesting is that you don't always agree. So we do have certain differences in what we think about certain things in cinema or portraying anything. But it was very inspiring for me to talk to him, and I hope it was inspiring for him to talk to me. And it was just very interesting to talk. But he came on the board really late, but he was a huge support because when there was a pandemic everywhere, I really was lucky to be in Mexico, actually working on the film and finishing the film in Carlos's studio, because we just did not go out and did not. It was we were in self-isolation with the team in the studio, and Carlos was the incredible host and showed us a great welcome. So, and he's a great filmmaker. So,
you want to share some of the difference of opinions you had with him? Some of the ways you have different perspectives on cinema.
Well, I think that one thing we share is that we're maybe both really opinionated about things, or like I'm very like passionate about my point of view, and he's very passionate about his point of view. But for example, like when he watched The Cut, and he was not in the beginning. He was like, "Oh, like why does she do what she does?" And he was uneasy with it, and that's when I see how human his point of view on cinema is, and how humanist maybe his point of view on cinema is, because he thought that it was too rough, maybe my point of view, and we had the difference. And then I was like, yeah, but no, this is the only ending this film can have, and we were like discussing it, and then he came back in a few hours and he said that yeah, actually like, this film can only have this ending. But he was still questioning, and he was questioning a lot. Maybe even in 2 weeks, maybe he was still questioning the decisions this woman was making. And that's interesting for me, because he takes things personally. It's like he cannot talk about cinema just only in theoretical like way, and it's not theory for him. He really experiences when he watches something or he thinks about something, he experiences it and actually has emotional connection with things he says. And I think that's the most interesting part about the friendship with him, or the communication with him. And yeah, we were talking about these things, or maybe I am more like fixated on how precise every shot I do needs to be, in a way. Maybe Carlos has the skill or the ability, or I don't know what that is, like to go to something which is more intangible.
Do you take cinema less personal than him? Are you able to keep your distance in a way?
No, not really. And because like for me, this film, it's not that autobiographical. It only, of course, it happens in a place where I grew up, and like, but it's very personal, and I do live through the experiences in a certain way, of course, like, but I do, without the personal emotional connection, I think I cannot make a film. And it's like, but maybe but no, yeah, I'm like, yeah, maybe I'm also a bit obsessive about, if I watch other people's rough cuts, I always tell my friends not to show me anything because then I start calling people at 3 a.m. trying to convince them to do something. No, but it's just I don't know. I think that differences make us all like interesting in what we do, of course. I mean, but there is of the cinema is, I think it's a universal language that also connects, and I think that's very important to really connect with each other, because we do live in such a segregated and like everywhere in a way you go, there is no, I don't know anymore what's happening.
Even more so today.
Yes. Especially today, like literally today. And cinema really has this universal quality because you don't need to know everything. You don't need to know everything about Mexico, or you don't need to know everything about Georgia in order to watch Georgian or Mexican film. It's humans and it's a human experiences. And but it could be very local, and I think that I really appreciate when it's really about something very specific. But then it has this universal quality that you just connect with.
Thank you. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk about your film and this incredible experience. And I hope that we will be able to meet
Yeah.
soon in different conditions and different circumstances and in a more physical way.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And I wish everyone interesting screening. But I wish I was there in person again, but it was very interesting.
Thank you.